If you're thinking of buying a home, or if you're in the market trying to sell your home, then this program is going to be for you. My guest is Alan Silverstein, who is a well-known Canadian author. He's a real estate lawyer and an author of Home Buying Strategies, and also the other best-selling book, Hidden Profits in Your Mortgage. Home Buying Strategies, your latest book, Alan. And
That's correct.
In that, you're talking about how the man, how the woman who's trying to find a good home can do so effectively. And if, I suppose, the individual was to come up to you and say, okay, Alan, what is the number one thing? And obviously it's crazy to give an answer just in sort of a very brief few seconds, but the number one thing I've got to be aware of when I'm trying to buy my home.
I'm going to give it to you in 2 words. Be prepared. Be a good Boy Scout. That's what the key is. Too many people get caught up in the emotionalism of buying a house. They make it into an impulse buying situation, and then they make commitments that they can't always uphold, or they don't think through these things enough, and there's all kinds of last-minute surprises, which are never pleasant.
Okay, but you take the average person, though, when they're looking, and you visualize a young couple, say, starting off. And not only was there the emotion involved in getting married, but here they are, and now they're looking at buying a home, and they go up to this place, and for some reason, the chemistry, if you can talk about it like that, seems tremendous. And they say, I love that house. What's wrong with that?
The problem is they shouldn't be out looking for a house at that stage. They should have done a lot of homework, a lot of advanced planning and preparation before they ever went out hunting for a house. Then, and only then, after they've thought through a whole slew of things, including financing, not to leave it to the end, but including financing, only then should they even go out on a house hunting expedition. Too often, people will approach a real estate agent and say, I want to buy a house, and they're asked that inevitable first question, how much do you want to spend? And that everything's off to the wrong foot.
So before I go into buying a house, I've got to figure out X number of dollars that I can afford to pay, you know, each month,
not only how much you can afford to pay. I mean, think of somebody who's going shopping in the supermarket. The wise shopper will prepare a shopping list of what they need and what they want. That's the way people should approach buying a house. Brian, people will spend more time researching the purchase of a car or a video or even a suit of clothes. Spend half an hour in the house and sign an offer.
But you take the individual who looks at a house and they say, wow, I really love this house. I know the roof leaks. I know, you know, the foundation may be a little shaky, what have you, but I really love this house. How does the individual go about taking that emotion and building a logical framework around it so that they can get what they love and yet be realistic at the same time?
Okay, there are a number of ways you can approach it. First of all, if you've done your homework and then you go and find this house and you fall in love with it, at least you're looking at it a lot more objectively than the person who hasn't done their homework. Secondly, you can build some protections into the offer to protect you that if the house is in really, really bad shape, you can withdraw from the transaction and get your deposit back. There's a whole industry growing up called home inspectors. The same way you take a car and get it checked out. If you're buying a used car, you get it checked at the diagnostic center. You can't put wheels on a house and roll it down the street, but you can have somebody come in and check out the roof and the heating and the plumbing and the electrical. Check out these things, and if they're really bad, you don't close. But if they're not too bad, at least you can go in with your eyes open. That's the key.
Is there any way, though, when I buy a house and I bought this, you know, my dream home, whether or not the roof leaks, and I've built into my offer or my understanding of my finances enough money so that I can look after that leaky roof. But okay, I buy the house, and there are the things that just happen by fate or whatever it is, and I bought the house, and I find out that the basement is cracked. The man who was supposed to do the checking of the house found everything was fine, and okay, he was a good guy, but a few months down the road, the basement cracked. Is there any protection for me there, or I'm just stunned?
Not really. That old expression, caveat emptor, let the buyer beware, still applies when you're buying pretty well anything, and most importantly, the buying of a house. It's still a situation where you've got to check things out before you make a commitment, because once you've made the commitment, and especially once you've turned over the money, you're not going to get it back.
So once I bought the house, there's no protection if anything goes wrong?
Not unless it is so substantial, so drastic, that you would want to go to court and sue. And then you're talking retaining lawyers, you're talking expenses.
Okay.
Lawyers are expensive, and I'm a lawyer, and I'm saying that.
I can imagine. I want to know about the whole business of whether or not it's going to be in my best interest to rent or buy with the kind of market that we have, and we'll get into that after we come back from this break. Thanks, Alan. Okay.
Okay. I want to know what is the normal price of a house in this time?
There's no normal price in the sense that the house is going to go for this amount of money. So many features, so many factors are built into the setting of a price. I think the key element in any price is location. Location, location, location is what people are always, agents are always ramming down buyers' throats. But there's a lot of justification to that, because a house, two identical houses, one in a good part of town and one in a part of town that's not nearly as good, the one in the nicer part of town will get a better dollar. And that's something to bear in mind. But I, in the book, go through location and put hyphens beside them. There's location, meaning community. Which part of the city do you really want to live in? And then let's narrow it down. Location, secondly, neighborhood. Within any given community, there are pockets of neighborhoods. And then there are factors which will affect the specific site. I have an ongoing feud with my sister-in-law. Which side of the street is better? She likes the east side so she can get a suntan. I like the west side so we can have the afternoon sun and let my kids play in the backyard. We'll never agree, but that's why there are houses on both sides of the street. These are just a few of the many, many factors people should consider before they ever even go looking for a house.
Okay, but Alan, pick up on the latest point where she's talking about the price that really is going to be a good price. And she's wondering, or a lot of us can wonder, there we have my dream home there, and I want to know, what price should I really offer? What can I really get away with? How do I go about establishing a price that's in my interest?
To go and establish a price, you've got to know what other people have paid, because certainly your price is going to be comparable to somebody else's price. And that's one thing that real estate agents do. They help establish the price by knowing what other houses have traded for in the market. So if similar houses have gone for $100,000, you can be pretty sure it's going to go in the $100,000 range. Now, you may decide to offer $90,000 or $92,000. If you get it that low, great. But you have to expect it's going to go somewhat a little bit higher. Most people, everybody really, comes in lower. They offer less than they really expect to pay, and it's a game. You have to realize it's a game. And the whole idea is to win this game.
Well,
So
say you were in that game and you wanted to get the best possible deal in your choice location. How are you going to go about doing that?
Well, you start with a lowball offer and see what they are prepared to countersign. It's the game, and you've got to know the rules and the strategy. So you come in low, and they want to sell. It's nice to know the circumstances if they've already sold. Or if there's a distress sale situation, maybe they've divorced and they have to sell. Maybe it's an estate sale where, again, they have to sell, especially in the wintertime. Heating a house is expensive. So find out more about the situation. If you know more, the more you know, you can negotiate from strength. So you may come in 90, 92, and then they sign back at 96, and there's a day's delay, and they don't know whether they've lost you, and the offers aren't coming in as they expected, and then you go up to 95. Eventually, if there's going to be a deal, you're going to have a meeting of the minds, but there's a lot of strategy, and there's a lot of acting that goes into it, both with the sellers, the buyers, and of course with the agents.
You've heard, Alan, a number of times that people say it's possible to buy with no cash down. Is that true?
I don't think so. I honestly don't think so. Brian, to buy a house, there's three ways you can pay for it. Cash, assume the seller's mortgage, or have the seller take back a mortgage. Now, technically speaking, you could structure it with no money down. The point is, when you do, you're taking advantage of the ignorance of the seller.
Okay.
I would like to make comment about your remarks a few moments ago before you got talking about deposits and down payments. I think you're forgetting one rather important feature here, and that's the market. It's fine to say you start with a low-ball figure, but not in a market like we have now, right across Canada, except perhaps Calgary. Properties that are well-priced by professional real estate people who know their market will sell within hours. And if you come in with a low-ball figure, you don't get that dream house.
If it's going to sell within hours, then it's been priced too low.
Oh, no.
So in other words, the agent has then taken advantage of the seller by saying, we're going to list it for 100, it really should go for 110, and that's why it goes for in hours. I'm convinced of it because I see it happening. That kind of property has been priced too low.
Well, I don't agree with you. I think certain properties have certain maximum prices.
That's right.
And it's up to the professional people to know those
I'm not out to
ballpark.
Criticize agents or take them to task because I deal
feeling
with
that
agents
you're
all the
rather
time.
negative.
I deal with them seriously. But on the other hand, when a property is sold in just a couple of hours or in one day, then you have to wonder, why was it listed so low?
Okay, but in a situation like that, though, Alan, where you've got a number of people who want to buy this, quote, dream home, and it's there, as the lady was saying, at a good price, and a price that's been established professionally, isn't that where the whole business of impulse buying or the emotion comes in? Because if they sense a whole lot of pressure coming from a number of other buyers who are going to buy this house, they've got to get in and make that decision quickly.
That's true. There's no question about that. On the other hand, think of it as an investment. And a businessman would not make an investment based on impulse. And I think that's the problem.
Wait a second. You get a number of businessmen, though, who, when they're confronted by a good opportunity, aren't going to let that opportunity go by. They're going to snap it up.
They're going to snap it up, but they're not going to do it in a half an hour.
Come on. They go on the basis of instinct. And they're going to say, somehow, there's a bit of, I guess, gut reaction in the middle of it all that tells me that's a good investment, that's a good opportunity, and I'm going to go for it.
And you know why? Because they've had the experience. That's the key. They've been through it before, and their gut reaction is because they've got the experience. If you take somebody who's a first-time buyer looking at the second house they've ever viewed in their life and all of a sudden decide that they're going to buy an impulse, that's dangerous.
But everybody isn't a first-time buyer.
But a lot of people, when they buy the first time, there's a big gap until the second time, and they've virtually forgotten everything they did. They say, geez, I wish I knew at the beginning what I knew at the end. But by the time the next beginning starts, they've forgotten it all. And there's so much new happening out there in terms of mortgage financing, in terms of all the new laws that we're facing. It's not as straightforward as it used to be.
Okay, but that brings into question the area that you talk about in your book, where you say that before the individual gets in, makes an offer, that one of the things he or she really should do is figure out what kind of mortgaging he or she is going to be able to get, and then move in and make your offer. Isn't that true?
That's right. This is totally opposite to what a lot of people have been saying up until recently. They say, get your offer, make it conditional on getting a mortgage, and then give yourself 5 days to get financing. Well, that sounds fine and good, but then the pressure's on once you've got the signed offer. Think about it. You've got 5 days. You'll take whatever offer of a mortgage is presented, whether it's the best one for you, whether it has the features that you want, simply because it's available. The prudent buyer today will shop the mortgage market at the same time and as carefully as they shop for a house. And then everything will converge at the same time. They're saying, we're looking for a house, we're looking for a mortgage. We know which house we like, we know which mortgage package we like. Now we make it conditional. We don't have to worry about the 5 days. And I'll tell you something else. If you know that you can qualify for a mortgage in terms of income and in terms of property requirements, then the question changes drastically. It's not a question of whether you're going to get a mortgage. It's a question of which lender is going to give it to you. And you can negotiate a lot differently when it's that different question because the shoe is on the other foot.
Thanks, Alan. We'll be back in just a moment.
I don't agree with you that necessarily.
A little controversy never hurt?
I don't agree just because a house sells quickly that it's necessarily underpriced. You see, the problem is that when you go to evaluate a house, you can only base it on very recent sales. And if you're a true professional and you've done your market analysis properly, then you will come up with a figure that's fair. And in a rising market, you will naturally add on the various percentages that are according to the time. So therefore, if you've done your homework properly, the house should be priced properly to sell.
How would you deal with somebody, though, who is coming in, or yourself, you're going to buy a house, and we're confronted with this whole business of impulse, that I know I've got this super house on the market, and there are a number of people who want to buy it at the same time, and Alan says you've got to be very cautious, and da-da-da-da-da-da, all this kind of business. And yet I'm seeing my house, a number of other people want to buy it. How do you handle the impulsiveness there?
Well, you like the impulsiveness, number one.
Do you go with it?
Absolutely. I think that
I've got to respond to this. I'm sorry.
I know you will respond to it, but I don't know about the buyers that you come into contact with, but my buyers are very well educated. They're business people. They know what they're doing. They've researched the market. They've researched their mortgages. And when they finally find a house that they love, they make it conditional to an inspection by a professional. And I don't think that this impulse buying is as rampant as you think it is. I certainly don't see it.
Maybe you're dealing with a very wealthy clientele or a university educated clientele, but the average person who is out there buying a house buys it on impulse. But I want to get back to your first comment. You know, lawyers have to learn to talk out of both sides of their mouth. And what I say on behalf of a buyer, I will say the opposite when I represent a seller. And representing a seller, if the situation was that the house was listed for 3 hours and the house was sold, their inevitable first comment is it was priced too low. Because if we had listed it higher, we would have gotten more and maybe only had to wait a couple of days. And they are very, very upset. When I represent a buyer, I say, you got a good price, you got a good value, and you certainly, were the first one in, the early bird catches the worm. You talk about impulse, people will buy a house on cosmetics. When people call me, and I'm sure, are you an agent, by the way?
Yes.
If you ask them what they should do when they want to sell their house, you'll say, spruce it up, maybe paint the outside. That's what you're hoping is going to influence a buyer. So you yourself are saying buyers will be influenced by paint, they will be influenced by a clean carpet, they will be influenced by a little bit of repair work. On the other hand, you said just a second ago your buyers never buy on impulse.
I didn't say that, hold on. I didn't say that they don't buy on impulse. I'm saying that a little bit of emotion and a little bit of excitement is very key when you buy a home.
People buy houses, they have a certain level of enthusiasm, and they want it to be increased. There's no question. And what I'm also encouraging in the book is to plan through all of the hidden costs, all of the things that crop up before closing. Now, people may know they should be shopping for a mortgage, they should be thinking of needs and wants, but that's something they tend to forget about, is the hidden costs.
Do you want to elaborate, though, Alan, before we go into the hidden costs, on this shopping list you talk about, where the individual has needs and wants?
Sure. By needs and wants, what do they absolutely have to get out of a house? Do they want a 3-bedroom house? Maybe the needs is a 3 and the wants is a 4. Do they want 1 washroom, or would they like 2? The needs is 1, the wants is 2. Now, this game plan, this strategy, changes as you're out looking for a house. It's just like you take any sporting endeavor, whether it's hockey or baseball or football, and the coach has got a game plan, but he has to refine it as the game is proceeding based on what's happening. So when you start looking for a house, you may say, you know, I really need a 4th bedroom. That shifts from wants to needs. You may say, I can do without the 2nd washroom. That goes from needs to wants. It's constantly undergoing refinement.
Okay.
I'd like to know how you explain the fact that so many buyers will simply buy a house and not have a professional inspect it. You said it yourself earlier that the people are not protected once they've signed, and so all of a sudden those hidden defects start cropping up. And very often I've seen agents not encouraging the house to be inspected by a professional, saying, go ahead, yes, yes, go ahead.
Okay,
it's
but
my job to sell the house.
talking about a reputable agent, though.
That was my answer, that it takes time for the public to demand it, and it has to be spurred on by agents encouraging it. And an agent will sometimes find themselves in a bit of a precarious position because they're fearful of saying to the seller, well, you know, they want an inspection, and, you know, they could open up a can of worms. So there is that fear. Now, what's happening in the major centers is that it's happening so often that it's becoming the accepted norm. But I've been traveling across Canada, and you get out west, and you're talking a term they've never heard of before, and sellers are scared. Sellers are scared that something is going to be revealed or uncovered that is going to jeopardize the whole transaction, and they would rather not sell to that person than have them bring in an inspector. It's going to take some time for the public to demand it, and like I said, for the real estate industry to encourage it.
Do you want to pick up that point you were making a little while ago about hidden costs? What are the hidden costs there? Because I see the house, it's going for X number of dollars, and usually a lot of people just focus on that amount of money, and yet, let's face it, there are a number of other price tags that are involved there.
Well, first of all, hidden costs are only hidden because they haven't been revealed yet. They will be revealed. It's just a question of when. It's also a question of who's going to reveal them. I don't know of any real estate agent who reveals all of these costs at the outset, simply because there is a tendency and a fear of scaring off purchasers if they knew really what was involved in buying a house. Not the $80,000, but the plus, plus, plus. What's involved? The first one is the fees that you're going to pay to the lawyer or the notary for doing the deal. And that is a fee that you should be shopping around for. They have out-of-pocket disbursements. That's another factor as well. Depending on the province, there may be some transfer taxes or some provincial taxes payable. But then you get into the adjustments. If the taxes have been paid for the whole year, you have to reimburse the seller with that. If there's an oil tank involved, it's usually topped up and you have to reimburse them. But then there's some other costs that people lose sight of. Mortgage. When you get a mortgage, you have an application or an appraisal fee. There generally will be a deduction up until the 1st of the next month for interest accruing. They may want money to put into a kitty for a tax account. These are just some of them. Then you've got fire insurance. You may need a new survey. Of course, the cost of the move, even if you rent a van, it's going to cost something. And these are the costs that people, whether they don't want to think about them or just forget about until the end, don't adequately plan for. And what happens is that they spring up at the end. They're revealed very, very close to closing, and if they're too substantial and have not been planned for adequately, the balloon could burst, you could plummet down to earth, and the enthusiasm level just tails right off.
Well, Alan, I want to pick up the 3 people who you figure can help the individual really buy a good piece of property after we come back from this commercial. Thanks. Okay, Alan, just before we took the break, you were talking about the 3 people who can really help the individual to make a good buy? Who are they?
The agent, the home inspector, and the lawyer.
Why does the individual have to go to the lawyer?
Okay, let me go through each individually and tell you what they do. First of all, the agent helps find the house. And I think unless the circumstances are just perfect, people do need the services of an agent to go find a house, okay? The work that's involved is quite substantial if you're going to try and do it on your own.
How do I find a good agent?
Agents, it's a service industry. It's referral. That's the best way of dealing with an agent. Somebody who's had good experience, or somebody who you are referred to as having worked an area a lot. That's the best type of person to go to.
Okay, tell me about the lawyer.
Okay, well, let's look at the home inspector first, because the agent finds the house, the home inspector checks it out. And that's important because you don't want to get into the lawyer or the notary until you're sure you want to go ahead with it. The third person is the lawyer or notary, and they're important twofold. Number one, which everybody knows, is to make sure title is good and to close the transaction. But I firmly believe that a lawyer or notary should have the opportunity of reviewing each offer before it's signed, before it's etched in stone, to make sure it says what it's supposed to say. You're talking a sizable 5- or 6-figure commitment, and it's important for the small price that you may pay $50 or $60 seeing a lawyer or notary. It's a form of insurance to make sure that everything is in there that's supposed to be and nothing is in there that's not supposed to be. It's a small price to pay for what it gets you, and it gets you peace of mind.
Okay, tell me, in terms of peace of mind, the point's been brought up a number of times where we're projecting a rising real estate market. Do you really believe that's going to keep on going?
Depends on the individual city, but in certain cities it looks very promising over the next few months.
Now, given that situation, why would some people opt to rent versus buying, given the rate of inflation, given the interest rates that they can get? Which would you encourage?
Renting or buying, it's a lifestyle decision. It's not one that people automatically make based on dollars and cents. People who want to stay mobile will continue to rent. People who want to have that permanence and that stability will continue to buy. Owning a home in this country is one of those old-fashioned virtues which has not died, and I don't think will ever die. It's still something people are striving for. They want to own their own home.
How about buying a condo? Is that a good deal?
Well, it's becoming more and more popular, and I've gone on record as saying that condominiums came to Canada for the wrong reason.
What's that?
They came to Canada as a form of lower-class housing. When they started going back to their historic roots, middle-class housing, which they have been in the States and in Europe, that's when condominiums began to take off. And there has been a study done in Ontario which said that the baby boomers of today will be the condominium purchasers of tomorrow because they've already demonstrated that they will pay for convenience. They'll want to pay the maintenance, and they will have the equity and the equity appreciation over time, so they will own their own unit but pay for the maintenance costs.
But isn't one of the tough things to unload the condo?
It's not that difficult these days if it's, first of all, well-priced, and secondly, the middle class and upper class, the so-called luxury condominium, there's no problem selling them these days simply because there is now a market for it. It's the other stuff at the other end of the scale which is not selling and probably will never sell.
Do you believe these get-rich-quick seminars in real estate really work?
Oh, the people who are running the seminars